The discovery of crude oil has revolutionized the world, yet in one nation, its abundance has brought more harm than good. Today, we look at Nigeria, a country that ranks 10th globally in crude oil reserves and 13th in production. As the largest oil and gas producer in Africa, Nigeria not only holds significant influence on the continent, but also generates enormous revenues from its exports. However, at what cost does this wealth come? And what is the reason behind the alarming reports of infant mortality in a certain oil-rich region in the country? The exploration of oil in Nigeria traces back to 1903, when the British colonial government, through the Nigerian Bitumen Corporation, initiated preliminary exploration activities in the country. However, these efforts were interrupted by World War I due to various logistical and geopolitical reasons. After the initial exploration attempts, major oil companies began to assume control over commercial exploration due to the limitations faced by smaller enterprises in terms of technology and finance. Companies such as Darcy Exploration Company and Whitehall Petroleum were granted licenses, but their efforts proved fruitless, leading to their withdrawal in 1923. However, in 1937, a significant turning point occurred when Shell Darcy Petroleum Development Company secured a notable license, marking a pivotal moment in Nigeria's oil exploration history. Exploration efforts eventually bore fruit in 1953 with the discovery of oil near Ekiti in the South-South geopolitical zone, which sparked substantial investments in the sector. Oloibiri in the Niger Delta emerged as the central hub for oil extraction after Shell Company's discovery in 1958, marking Nigeria's entry into the League of Oil-Producing Nations. Subsequently, exploration rights expanded to encompass foreign companies in adjacent onshore and offshore areas, further advancing Nigeria's oil industry. Post-independence in 1960, Nigeria's economy heavily relied on revenue from the petroleum industry. By the late 1960s and early 1970s, production levels soared to over 2 million barrels per day. Although a decline ensued in the 1980s due to economic downturns, a resurgence in 2004 propelled production to a record high of 2.5 million barrels per day. As of February 2021, Nigeria's oil sector contributed approximately 9% to the nation's GDP. Notably, Nigeria emerged as a major exporter of crude oil and petroleum products to the United States, with exports in 2010 reaching over 1 million barrels per day, constituting 9% of US imports and over 40% of Nigeria's exports. The country's proven oil reserves as of 2015 stood at 37.14 billion barrels. Presently, Nigeria produces 2.4 million barrels of crude oil daily, ranking 10th globally in proven oil reserves, with the second largest reserves in Africa after Libya, according to the Oil and Gas Journal. Despite Nigeria's lucrative oil export industry, the benefits have not translated into an improved quality of life for its citizens, as evidenced by indicators such as life expectancy, educational attainment, and real income. Nigeria's Human Development Index, HDI, stood at 0.535 points in 2021, ranking 164th out of 191 countries, highlighting systemic challenges that persist despite the country's oil wealth. Institutions in Nigeria have struggled to effectively manage the substantial oil revenue for economic growth and societal advancement. Mismanagement and embezzlement of federal funds have been widespread, perpetuating corruption and hindering investment in critical infrastructure. The economy's heavy reliance on oil has had detrimental effects on social well-being, notably contributing to a decline in the once productive agricultural sector. Consequently, Nigeria has become increasingly reliant on food imports, while social infrastructure is deteriorating, exacerbating poverty levels that persist at alarming rates. Beginning in the early 1980s, Nigeria encountered debt issues stemming from poor public finance planning, worsened by indiscriminate borrowing without proper evaluation. As a result, a significant portion of oil revenue has been diverted to debt servicing rather than essential development projects. Corruption and mismanagement have plagued Nigeria's oil wealth, with estimates suggesting that over $217.7 billion could have been siphoned from the national treasury since the commencement of oil exports. Political instability exacerbates these challenges, perpetuating a cycle of economic mismanagement and underdevelopment. The mismanagement of oil revenue is a significant issue, but it pales in comparison to the devastating impact of oil pollution on Nigeria's ecosystems. Once thriving regions have been transformed into wastelands due to this environmental degradation, largely attributed to the actions of the UK-Dutch conglomerate Shell. Operating in Nigeria since the 1950s, Shell's extraction activities in the Niger Delta have wreaked havoc on both the environment and the local population. According to the National Oil Spill Detection Agency, NOSTA, Shell bears significant responsibility for the rampant oil spills plaguing Nigeria, particularly near Port Harcourt. These spills have catastrophic effects on local farmland, rendering it infertile and severely impacting fish populations, which are a vital source of sustenance and livelihoods for many residents. Since the 1990s, the Nigerian populace has been actively protesting, demanding reparations for the damages inflicted by Shell's operations. This movement gained international attention in 1993, shedding light on the plight of those affected. Despite widespread outcry, Shell persisted with its activities, disregarding the calls for accountability. The Nigerian government's response to these protests has been equally troubling. Instead of addressing the grievances of its citizens, the government attempted to suppress dissent, resulting in tragic consequences. Between 1993 and 1999, approximately 2,000 lives were lost as a direct result of the government's efforts to quell the protests, demonstrating a blatant disregard for human rights. The situation is just as dire in Bayelsa State and surrounding areas, where communities are grappling with an environmental crisis. According to the Rise for Bayelsa campaign, an estimated 40 million liters of oil are spilled annually in the Niger Delta region, exacerbating environmental degradation and posing significant challenges for the affected communities. The contamination of air, land, and water has had devastating consequences on residents' health and means of living. Extensive damage has been inflicted on the region's once diverse ecosystem, particularly its waterways and mangrove swamps. Farmland is now coated in oil, contaminating crops and exposing people to hazardous levels of chromium, lead, and mercury. Moreover, gas flaring, a byproduct of petroleum extraction where natural gas is burned off into the atmosphere, has further polluted the air, leading to the formation of acid rain. With 3/4 of Bayelsa's population estimated at 2 million relying on fishing or farming for sustenance, communities are increasingly resorting to alternative means of survival. This shift has contributed to a surge in criminal activities and artisanal refining. In a disturbing revelation, a recent study indicated that in 2012 alone, approximately 16,000 infants died within their first month of life due to oil pollution in the Niger Delta. Separate research cited in the interim report of the Bayelsa State Oil and Environmental Commission highlights the heightened risk of kidney damage and the prevalence of diseases such as cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's among affected communities. Campaigners have also documented a rise in cases of diarrhea and child malnutrition. International and local anti-corruption initiatives, NAITI, the Coalition for Accountability and Transparency in Extractive Industries, and the Facility for Oil Sector Transformation, FOSTA, in the Niger Delta, have been instrumental in addressing corruption and mismanagement of oil reserves, as well as mitigating the environmental degradation caused by crude oil. While these initiatives have yielded positive results, a decisive shift away from the nation's over-reliance on crude oil is essential to mitigate its detrimental effects. Recently, Nigeria has begun to recognize the vast potential of solid materials, particularly lithium, as a promising alternative. The extraction methods for lithium involve less land disturbance and pollution. By directing attention towards such alternatives and investing in diverse sectors, Nigeria can pave the way for economic expansion, the generation of employment opportunities, and technological progress without compromising the welfare of its citizens. Subscribe to our channel and embark on a journey into Africa's hidden narratives and untold stories. Explore the continent's rich history, unravel geopolitical complexities, and navigate its dynamic economy. It's more than just staying informed. It's an opportunity to challenge misconceptions and celebrate Africa. Join a community committed to understanding, engaging with, and appreciating Africa. Hit subscribe, embrace the unknown, and be a part of reshaping perspectives.